Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you again, Connor. Really appreciate it. Nice job. And yeah, happy to see that. So I think I turn it over to Megan.
Awesome. Thank you. That was a really great presentation. This day is flying by, and we have a really nice interview coming up. We have Mike Johnson, who I see on the line there, an analyst for the NHL Network and TSN. He had to bear with me a week or so on his show, so he has a lot of patience for questions. Retired professional ice hockey, who played in the NHL for the Toronto Maple Leafs, Tampa Bay Lightning, among other teams. Definitely a fan favorite of the hockey analytics community that we see at various events. We saw you last night and incorporates a lot of that analysis to his media work. A quote I regularly see on Twitter is, "I wish I was as good at my job as Mike Johnson is." So welcome, thanks for being here. And then of course, we have one of my favorite people on the planet, Alison Lukan, the wonderful freelance writer. She's been in a lot of the publications that you read as a data-driven storyteller, with the ultimate in interviewing skills. So I'm very interested to hear both of you square off, and I'll leave it to you, Alison.
Thank you so much, Megan. You're one of my favorite people, of course, too. As is Mike. Mike, we have to stop meeting like this. I think we've been on Zoom together more than we've been in person this past year.
I know. Well, I look forward to when people can get back together, and then we'll do one of these conferences and we can get together, or I'll find you in Columbus, or you can find me in Toronto, or one of the many places I go to. So yeah, it's better to meet you this way than not at all, though.
Absolutely. We wanted to take this time to really kind of bridge the gap between all of the tremendous analytical work that we're seeing this weekend and communicating it and delivering it specifically in the media, because work is almost lost in some ways if we can't translate that value to people who are following the game at a variety of levels in organizations and outside. And just as Megan always sees your name mentioned, I always see your name praised for the ability of yours to weave video, game experience, player experience, but also some of the work and the revelations that analytics are bringing to the forefront. How do you describe the way you think about providing analysis on the game?
Well, I think first off, thanks for the compliment, but I try to be entertaining, right? Like, I mean, at some point, it's a sport. People are spending time watching it or engaging with it because they want to be entertained. They want to have some fun. So you have to, everything kind of falls under that umbrella. And then the next part of my job that I kind of just try to explain why. I mean, that's my job, is kind of answer why. If the play-by-play guy's telling you what, I'm telling you why. Whatever happened, and however I can best do that, whether it's drawing on personal playing experience, whether it's from watching the game and seeing something, whether it's incorporating numbers that support what's happening on the ice or what I'm seeing, or trends that are happening with the game. That's what I do. And the more things I can draw from to answer that question, the better my answers are going to be. It's like any kind of test, like any kind of assignment. You know, you want as much information as you can get before you deliver your answer. So I try to draw from every possible area available to me. And sometimes that means, you know, coming down this avenue. Sometimes that reverts to when I grew up playing or whatever it might be, or played in the NHL. And I try to just bring a little bit from all those different things to make it as informative and hopefully as entertaining as possible.
I think that maybe there's a perception. I think so many people would share your perspective. They want to explain the why. They want information to help them do that. But there seems to be a barrier of entry to this type of work specifically.
Sure.
And maybe there's a stereotype that particularly someone who's played or been in the game is less likely to cross that barrier. What pushed you through that barrier? What challenged you to get through it? And how could those of us who are passionate about this kind of work reduce that barrier to entry maybe?
Why is that, Alison? Because we're not smart enough to do it on my side. No, you know what? You're right, though. I think there's a couple different reasons. One, and it's a terrible answer, and it's an answer to a lot of things in the world, is because that's the way it's been. Right? It's always done that way, and that doesn't just apply to my job, but like a lot of things, and that's no longer really a viable answer to anything. The other part about it is that, you know, it takes a little bit of work to kind of learn and to spend time studying and to try to understand it. If you don't understand, asking people to help you understand. I think there's a discomfort with math, which I think a lot of this is based on. Now, maybe I was a little bit fortunate. I have a degree in finance, and math was my better subject growing up. So I was terrible at English. Oddly enough, I speak for a living, but I was good at math. So that part wasn't intimidating to me. And then, there's the very real part of it is that, so even if you understand it, have good information, want to deliver it, what's the appetite for taking that in? And I could talk to you about that, and you might be really fascinated by it, but you would probably be a minority in maybe the general viewership. So, trying to get it so that, you know what you're talking about and it's good information, but also that it's easily digestible and something that someone at home is like, if I have another person say, I watch sports, I don't want to do math, right? So you want to make sure whatever you're doing is not going to turn anyone off because it just looks like a bunch of numbers and they feel like they're back in grade 10 math and they don't like it at all. So those are some of the barriers. Now, the good part about my job is, I work at TSN, I work at NHL Network, and for the most part, the producers, my bosses, the hosts, the play-by-play guys, like they're all to varying degree receptive and open to these ideas. And I'll have times where a producer or a game like, no, that's too much, too many numbers, can we simplify it? Can we eliminate it? But for the most part, it's like, okay, what are you saying? Let me understand it and let's make it work for television. As opposed to, I don't want to do that, which I think some people have that attitude, but I've been fortunate enough not to bump into many people like that where I work. So, I think if I take it all the way back, it was a very spirited debate when Hockey Analytics kind of got onto social media, and I follow everyone and I would follow the conversation. And for a lot of it is, I would want to understand what the argument's about. And I would want to understand, the merits of both sides. And while I guess I would understand the hockey traditional side more easily because I guess I'm a traditional hockey player, I want to understand, the number side and what that makes sense. And so that's probably what spurred my mind into it. And then it just kind of evolved from there.
You mentioned something I'm equally passionate about, and that's making this kind of information accessible and interesting, right? And, one of the things that I always like to talk about is use approachable language. As much as we know what Corsi is, what Fenwick is, that doesn't resonate with the casual fan. Are there lessons you've learned or tips that you would give to someone who understands the complexities, but how do they make these concepts, these ideas approachable and accessible to more people through different communication tactics?
Well, there's probably like an industry focus that should be like, there should probably be, if you and I have talked about this, like a universal language, like whatever terms we want to come up with, like let's come up with them and stick with them and not kind of massage them and adjust them. And, so that people eventually can get comfortable understanding, even if it's a new term over the course of 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's no longer new and it's used by everyone. And I think that would be a good start. And I think, I was watching last night the Data Cup, and I remember taking statistics. I remember being like, but I don't like what a Bayesian regression model. I'm like, I'm not sure I know what that is. So like there's terms where no matter how well versed you are, maybe how bright you are, like you're not gonna understand what that means. So like you want as few of those as possible. You'd never want someone to watch me like, I don't know what he's talking about. Like I don't understand at all what he's saying. Forget about the numbers. I just don't even understand the word. So if you can limit that at all, and maybe that's taking it away from a mathematical academic language into a more common dialogue talking language. But also I think finding whatever terminology we're getting at and sticking with them. I think that would be a big start.
Are there things that you are, I believe also a big believer in video, right? And pictures. I can tell you a concept,
Sure.
But if I show you the play, it might resonate better. Is this really true that that it is true that having played the game helps you because you can connect it to a play or a player? Is that a valuable tactic?
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, like think about like a multi-immersive way to explain something. So I could talk to you and just be my face. And you're like, okay, you can hear me. I could show you some numbers and maybe your brain's like, okay, those numbers make sense. But if I could take those two things and then illustrate it, this is what I'm talking about. These are the numbers that support it. And here is how it looks like on the ice. Whatever it is you're talking about, you want to talk about zone entries. Well, this is the guy who does it. There's Johnny Gaudreau. He's good at that. This is why he's good at it. This is what it looks like when he does it well. This is what it looks like when someone doesn't do it well. Absolutely. I think that is a pillar of doing any kind of analysis well, is to show and explain it in as many different ways possible. So yeah, for sure, if you can, if you can tie that in, I don't think you're any more limited than I am. Like I might have played, but you watch the game, you know what you want to talk about, you understand examples of what you're explaining. So I don't think, because I happen to play in the NHL, I don't think I'm any better at drawing on video that would explain the thoughts that I might have, you might have, but it is a really important part. And that's one of the big challenges in doing games, because we don't have a lot of time. We don't have time for a 3-element explanation of something. Like in intermissions, sure. At the NHL Network, where we're on for 6 hours in a row, I can go 30 minutes on one play if I wanted to. But in a game, it's hard. It's hard to build the graphics, hard to have the stats real time. It's more challenging. So you have to really kind of pick and choose where you're doing those.
We are lucky that one of the forerunners in Viz, just crazy innovation, Micah Blake McCurdy, is speaking next. But to your point, are we at a place where there are visuals that you think are effective in communicating, or is it still they're kind of sprinkled around different kinds and it takes too long to build them, like you say? How can visuals help us, I guess I'm asking?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, they have to be simple. They can have complex material, but they have to be simple to understand. And while again, I think I'm closer to the forefront for people who do my job at understanding this. If I have to look at a graphic or a visual and it takes me 10 seconds to kind of figure out what I'm looking at, I can't put that on TV. I can't use that. I know there's not enough time. So even though there's probably a lot more value in something that takes a little more time to digest in a different kind of setting. So I think, I don't know if networks will go down that road. I know, some networks partner up with different stats companies, and they can produce some things that might be more TV friendly. But yeah, trying to find something that is informative, but easy to understand.
Gotcha. You mentioned something, and I want to circle back to that, and that's the value of having played the game. And we're, in terms of breaking down stereotypes, shockingly, many of us at this conference do in fact watch the game. That is a true statement.
You even watch the game, bro? Come on.
Exactly. But let's flip that on its head. For people like myself who love to get into the why in terms of numbers and really that kind of analysis, what should we make sure we always challenge ourselves to garner, check with, or learn from people who have played the game if we have not done that?
That's a great question. And I think, and that's why I love looking at the numbers, because it works both ways for me, from the stuff I may intuitively know from playing. And I love when there's symmetry, when the numbers will back up what my eyes are telling me. And maybe I trust my eyes more than you might trust yours. I don't know if you should not trust yours, but I don't know if I should trust mine, but either way, I might. But I like when they line up, okay, what I think I'm seeing and what the numbers dictate, that's really interesting. But I almost like more when they don't, because that makes you look at it deeper, makes you try to understand why. Why do I think this guy's doing really well? Why are the numbers telling me that he's not? And then when you look at it deeper, whether that's eye test, video, talking to scouts, whatever it is, there's a million different ways to dig deeper. And then maybe you find where the disconnect was. And I think finding the disconnect, if there is one, is a really important part of delivering information. And because it will reinforce what you think, because you will have figured out why there is a disconnect, or it will alter what you think. Either way, you're getting to a more comprehensive conclusion. So I guess my answer to you would be, if you haven't played, if you don't have that maybe blind trust in what you think and see, maybe you check in with someone who watches the game, say, this is what I'm seeing, or this is what the numbers tell me. I'm seeing it this way. Am I accurately seeing it this way? Do you think that Mike Johnson's a terrible defensive forward? Because that's what my numbers are telling me. And they're like, yeah, he is. So you're right on track. Or they'll say, no, he's not as bad. And then you try to figure out why. But I think, checking in to see that they line up or they don't is never a bad idea. Awesome.
As we keep going, I just want to remind our attendees, if you do have questions for Mike, please type them in the Q&A. We'd love to feature those. But you mentioned this is something we've talked about a little bit. I think we're going to be talking about more offline as well. What is your position on how much active players should even have to worry about data, the numbers? I know what I think. What do you think?
Right. Okay. So I don't know if they need to worry about data. They might need to worry about what the data is telling me and telling them. So I don't need to tell, like Mark Scheifele, one of the nicest guys, good player. Last week, he's like, that's all hogwash in his very non-swearable way of speaking. And And like, okay, I don't need to show you a spreadsheet, but if you need to understand that if you don't shoot the puck from this area of the ice, you're not going to score. Okay, well, you do need to know that, and you should want to know that. Now, again, it talks about how you're going to deliver that message. So, no, I don't think they should be bogged down. And I know a lot of guys want no part of trying to like think about what they're doing. And I think there's truth to that. I mean, athletics is, best played when it's instinctive, but you can help shape your instincts by what you know and what you learn. And so I think that's where it's important for players to understand. But where it's most important, and this is why I always would tell guys when I talk to them, like, you may think we're like, I'm a nerd and like, I'm math for dummies and like whatever. You're going to get paid or you're going to get hired because of what these numbers say. So you should care. You want a long career? You want a good, strong arbitration case? Like these numbers, if you don't think that the clubs are looking at them very carefully and evaluating who they want to sign, what kind of contracts they want to give, who's replaceable, who's not, all that stuff that as a human being, of course you care about as a player, then you should be at least interested in that side of it. So, get the message that matters to you because you're going to get paid or get hired because of it.
So now whose job is it to understand what they say? Is it the coaches? Is it the agents? Who should be helping the player learn the lesson?
So this, I think, is a massively important role that is developing and it's already there in all different sports. There has to be a liaison, a translator from this. Well, Lee Stepniak just got the job in Arizona. Very similar job. Yeah, like, yes, I think I would be good at that job. But I think that like somewhere could talk to the data-driven people and what they're seeing and help them curate the numbers and information that would be important. But then translating it into hockey speak, because you've been around a locker room, like we don't speak like academics speak at all. And so you need the same language, and you probably need it coming from a trusted voice, and which is terrible. But initially, when there will be hesitation to, embrace or want to spend the time, because it might take a little time to understand it. If someone that they don't know, players, women, men, whatever, the players don't believe that person understands what they're going through, understand the challenges of playing, then they will probably be a little bit hesitant to absorb and really embrace the message. And I think that's normal. That's human nature. That's not a massive criticism. So I think the job of getting it to the players has to come through the management team, but not necessarily the analytics department, unless someone's really good at that at the analytics department, if someone happens to be working that can do that. But I think, if I walked into a dressing room, or if, the PhD in math and science walked in the dressing room who's never played sports to the knowledge of the players, they'd probably be more inclined initially to listen to me. So I think there is, that is a valid point, whether it comes from, some creative position like a Lee Stepniak, or that person talks to the coaches and the coaches down to the players, but it has to be changed, filtered, sculpted to the players by the time it gets there.
Well, and that brings us to coaches. This is my opinion. We do have some coaches who actually believe the lessons analytics are teaching us, but maybe don't use those words. And then we have some coaches who quote numbers and we're like, that's not even a thing. Like, what are you talking about, right? What is your assessment on the current ability, this is a broad brushstroke, of NHL coaches to help facilitate the role you just described, to understand what numbers tell us and apply it to their teams, whether it be at a player level or a team level? Loaded question.
Yeah, it is. So I would say it's improving. I would say, and it's like really hit or miss, because you'll have some guys who might be, passionate about it, or at least informed about it, and will use it. And you have other guys who have no time at all. There's still people like they want nothing to do with it, and they'll get the report that will come down to them, and it'll be a 50-page report that'll get, simplified to a 1-page report, and they're like out. Like they don't want to do it. And so that's the reality with anything. Some people are quick adopters, some people are slow adopters, but as an organization, you need to establish the importance of what you believe and whatever that is. And if you believe as an organization that there is value to be had and things to be learned by understanding the analytics, then you get a coach that does that, or you find somebody, I don't know what you want to call them, he can be the coach whisperer, whatever you want to be, and he can help the coach understand. Because again, much like the players, if you believe the numbers, if the numbers are accurate, if they're correct, they will make him more successful. And why wouldn't he want to be more successful? Of course he's going to want to win more games, have a better chance to win a cup. Like, it's going to help what we're all after. So, but again, they have to help them. The other part about, and I think this is a reality, coaches are busy. You know this. Like, coaching without trying to introduce something new takes 18 hours a day. Like, they're always thinking about stuff. So, taking the time to learn something new, to how it could work, it's tricky in season. Not an excuse, but it's reality.
We have tons of questions about this, and this is a question from Josh. Whether, and I'm going to broaden his question a little bit, whether it be this translator role that you and I are passionate about, or the coach, and you are going to incorporate data or whatever the analysis results are. You mentioned coaches speak or hockey speak. I know certain teams have, certain charts in the room or certain visuals in the room. Are there best ways to communicate what the data is saying without losing a player's attention? We know about the trust factor that you mentioned, but are there tangible ways that you think connect most? I've seen Seth Jones can talk video all day long, but charts, that's not a criticism. No,
but I think like any coach-player relationship, they're all different. Like, how a coach could talk to me and how a coach could talk to you to get the both out of either of us is different. How a coach needs to explain a drill. Like, some guys, you can say the drill and they'll do it. Some guys need to look at the whiteboard 25 times and they still going to screw up. The drill busters. Like, so if I'm a coach, I need to know, okay, Alison, she's bright. I can give her the video. I can give her some numbers. She's going to absorb it. Mike, he doesn't want to see those things quite the same way. He's not quite as bright with regards to that, but he's a better player. So we're going to make sure we got him and we teach him. And you don't need to show numbers. Guys understand video, and you talked about the importance of video. So I don't need to say, here's the numbers that back this up. You trust me, you're going to score. You're going to get 40% more scoring chances if you do this. And this is where you go when you're successful. This is where you go when you are not. Let's work on developing patterns that get you in the successful stuff more often. So I don't think there is a universal best practices, deliver the players this way, talk this way. It's like any player-coach relationship, any player, we're all different. We all learn differently. So you have to kind of know your players and how you approach them.
Awesome. A couple folks are interested. So maybe you might have an example on this, Mike, too, but just that whole idea that you already described of when the data and what your eyes tell you don't match. How often does that happen? How do you react? Do you have any examples of that?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm trying to rack my brain right now. But I often think, and I think that this is a really important area of data analysis for hockey. They fall in the middle, right? Like, you can tell me, here's numbers that say Connor McDavid's good. I'm like, oh, thanks. That's great to hear, right? And you could tell me that a fourth, fifth liner is not very good. Like, thanks. I know that too. I find the disconnect often lies in the middle. Those second, third line players, the fourth, fifth defensemen, and understanding value and like defensive metrics and all those kind of things. And I think that's where I often think there's a disconnect, where I look at a number and I'll watch a guy play. I'm like, I think he's not contributing as much. Right? I don't think he's doing much to help the team. He's just kind of existing out there. And then you look at his underlyings or whatever you can look at, and it's actually quite strong. Like, I find those are often the case. And then I have some relationships with people, and when that happens, I'll call the people that make the numbers, and I'll be like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And we'll talk, and we don't always agree. Like, I'm not always left saying, "Oh, okay, I was wrong." I'll often say, "No, I think you're wrong," right? But like, you flesh it out, you dig deeper, and go down that road. So I think generally found in the middle, and it's often found in players who don't score a lot. And points are a driver, goals are a driver of so much of how we think about players, and even a lot of these numbers are driven by shots, chances, goals. If you're not a guy who does a ton of that, like, how do we assign value to those players? That's harder to do.
The follow-up question here too was, how should someone who didn't play hockey at a high level like yourself look at situations when there's a disconnect? Any suggestions for those people? So the vast majority of us.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I think there's two things you do, right? Like, you could like dig in and watch the player or the situation more closely, go back and watch more video, track more video going forward, or do the opposite of what I do, like maybe get in touch with someone who maybe that you trust or that has. And so whether you're going to call someone like me or talk to a scout or talk to a coach and pick their brain about what they're seeing with regards to what you're seeing. And then maybe it helps you down that path. This is the exact same process I would go through. I go to the expert in the field. If it's not me, then I go to them and see what we come up with.
I'm going to put you on the spot here with this next question. What are your go-to resources and or daily routine of resources that you go to learn more about analytics and or to prepare to call or comment on a game?
Well, so like it's pretty exhaustive, as you know. I mean, so it's the morning of the game or the day before the game. I'll watch generally the previous 3 or 4 games leading up to a game for those teams. I'm always watching games. I will be reading traditional media articles about what's happening, just you can, coaches quotes and all the rest of it leading up to those days. I'll look at the traditional stats just so I'm aware of, who's scoring well, what the power play is doing, just general numbers. You dig through those media notes. And I do that every day, every single day. And then, I peruse the publicly, natural stat trick and, Money Puck and different natural websites that are available publicly. And I'll go through them and see what sticks out, see what pops. I am, I don't tweet a lot, but I follow a lot. I'm always refreshing. So, I take cues from the community and what they're saying. And if they say something's happening, well, let me go look. Let me go understand. And maybe there's a story there that I can help flesh out, or maybe this person I don't agree with, and go down that road. And then occasionally, I have relationships with a couple of private companies where if I'm going into a Montreal game and Eric Staal is going to play there, I'm like, okay, so why is Eric Staal shooting 2% this year? What does that tell me? I didn't watch enough of Buffalo because no one's that masochistic. So what are you saying about Eric Staal? Like, is he still good? He's not, so I'll maybe dig into resources like that, put that all together, come up with a list of like 50 things for a night, boards, video, notes, stats, do a broadcast and use 6 of them. Like that's yep. Every game.
Yep. We have just a few minutes left, so I'll let anyone who would like to submit any more questions, please do so. But Mike, something I wanted to ask you too, from your vantage point, which is different than maybe how some of us think the game, what are the next questions or issues or areas of research that you would like to see people who are focused on data explore?
2 sides of the same coin. Like goalie evaluation, goal save above average, that expected goalie saves and expected goals is the same thing. But I like, it's just so hard to come up with a number because there's so many variables in every single situation. And so Steve Alquette does some really interesting stuff. I always like listening to him, and I always kind of think I'm learning there. But like, trying to get that, if those could be more universally understood or agreed upon or accurate, I think that would be a really, really big step in trying to figure that out. Defensive metrics, again, defensive defensemen, defensive forwards, how important are they? How much do they contribute? What is their value relative to the success of a team? I'd like to see that. And if I'm going to be greedy, if anyone wants to take a project on, I'd like to know if I was any good analytically. I want to believe I am. So maybe don't do it, because I kind of do believe I am, but I don't know. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. I'd like to see historical context, because this kind of thing started, 2009, I think is like first publicly tracked year. What was Gretz? What was Mario? What was Bobby Orr? How good were these guys? I'd love to see the historical context. And one more thing. When I read, I see a lot of stuff about, individuals or, team failure or success. I'd love to see a development or more done on team strategy. So not just, the Flyers are giving up a lot of goals because this is what's happening. But if I'm a team, if I'm a coach, I'm an organization, what team-wide things can we do, and why will they be successful, and how often, and how that would work relative to personnel, relative to just general average players. I think that's probably maybe next layers, or maybe the teams have that already. I just can't see it. But I would like to see that, because I'd like to see, the thought process behind developing a game plan.
Awesome. We have one final question. I'll ask you to answer this one quickly for us. It's kind of the crux of so many things when we talk about analytics right now with hockey. How much do you really think that what a player is doing can be isolated from the impact of his teammates? Boom.
Oh, you want me to answer that one quickly? Oh, thanks a lot.
Yep.
I think it can be measured. It's tough to filter out the isolation. But I think there's still value, even if you can't, pinpoint exactly how much, if you get a general idea based on a number, even if there's some sort of margin of error of plus minus 5 to 10%, it still will tell you something. There's still value in that. So it's a very team-driven sport. It's not basketball, it's not football, it's not baseball. It's all very fluid, not enough static moments, but I still think even if you can't, and I don't know, you're the math wizards, it might be hard. I still think there's value, even if you get as close as you can to isolating it.
Well, Mike, as every time we chat, we never have enough time. You just share so many insights. You're such a pleasure to talk to. We appreciate you making time in your busy day to talk with all of us. Thank you so, so much. Thank you, everyone who submitted questions. We're now going to take a 15-minute break. I'll thank you, Mike, again, and we'll be resuming. We'll be resuming at 3:15. Thank you all so much.